There are truths buried beneath the skin of this world, secrets etched into the fabric of our being that go unnoticed by the common gaze. Most of us move through our lives unaware of the strange hidden forces that shape us and define our perceptions. We see the world through a veil that's coloured by more than just the shades of light and darkness. But what if this veil is not the veil of nature, but of something else entirely? What if the colours of our skin were never meant to be what they are now? What if in the beginning there was no difference? Consider for a moment the ancient whispers of a time before the flood, before the cataclysm that would reshape the face of the earth. In the ancient texts, there are echoes of a world that existed in harmony, a world where men and women moved in unity with the natural rhythms of the earth. The gods walked among them, teaching them the ways of the cosmos, revealing secrets that are now lost to time. These beings, divine in nature, were said to be of a singular appearance, one that transcended the very boundaries of race and skin. What if, in that forgotten era, the question of skin colour was irrelevant? What if the physical appearance of humanity was not defined by the light that bathed the earth, but by a more profound and hidden truth, one that modern science has yet to fully comprehend? The story we are told today, the story of human evolution and the development of racial diversity, is not the full story. It is a fragment, a piece of a much larger puzzle. What if the true history of humanity, as whispered by ancient civilizations, speaks of a time when the skin of humanity was one, a time before the differentiation of races? There is, however, an uncomfortable truth. Ancient records suggest that the change in skin colour may not have been an accident, nor merely a natural progression of adaptation to the sun or environment. The change might have been a consequence of something far deeper, a spiritual transformation. That occurred after a great calamity, a cataclysmic event that shook the earth to its very core. The ancient Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations known to man, tell of a time when humanity was united. In their epic tales, the gods are described as beings of light, their appearances transcending earthly boundaries. These divine beings did not possess the differences we see in humans today. They were, in essence, a reflection of the purest form of being, a manifestation of a higher, more unified state of existence. The gods came down to earth, according to these texts, and imparted knowledge to humanity, knowledge of the stars, of mathematics, of agriculture. They taught them how to build cities, how to harness the elements, and how to interpret the divine will. These early humans, before the Great Flood, were said to have lived in a state of grace. The earth was bountiful, and the people were united, not by their skin, but by their shared connection to the divine. But something changed. The unity of humanity, as it is told in the Sumerian texts, was fractured. A great cataclysm, which we now call the flood, altered the earth's surface and its inhabitants, and with it came the division, not only of lands but of races, each with their own skin, each marked by a different hue. Was this change of appearance a result of environmental adaptation, or was it something more profound? Did the Great Flood not only reshape the world, but also the very fabric of humanity itself? As the Sumerians say, after the flood, humanity was scattered, and with this scattering came the fragmentation of their unity. New groups, different in appearance, with skin tones ranging from the deepest black to the palest white, began to emerge. This transformation, so deeply tied to the tragedy of the flood, suggests that there was more to the change in skin colour than mere survival. What if this change was a symbolic reflection of the spiritual divide that occurred between humanity and the divine after the flood? In the book of Genesis we read of the Tower of Babel, a moment in history where humanity's unity was once again fractured. The people, united by one language and one purpose, sought to build a tower that would reach the heavens. But the gods, perhaps remembering the ancient days when humanity lived in harmony, decided to intervene. They confused their language, and in doing so, the unity of humankind was shattered once again. The unity of purpose was broken, and so too was the unity of appearance. With the scattering of peoples came the scattering of skin colours, each one reflecting the different paths humanity had taken. But was this division truly meant to be? Was it the natural course of things, or was it the result of something deeper, something that perhaps was not meant to happen? We know that ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Romans all saw skin color as something more than just a physical trait. To them, it was a symbol of something much larger. The Greeks, for example, believed that the gods themselves were beyond race, beyond the physical forms we take in this world. They were beings of light, of a divine essence that transcended earthly boundaries. The question then arises, what if, in their understanding, skin color was never meant to be a defining feature of humanity? What if, like the gods of old, we were meant to be something more, something united, something transcendent? The shifting of skin tones across the ages could be a reflection of humanity's spiritual and physical separation from its divine origins. The more we distance ourselves from the unity that once existed, the more divided our outward appearances have become. And yet there is something unsettling in this division, something that doesn't sit right. If skin color was never meant to change, if it was not meant to divide us, then what happened to that original unity? What forces have shaped our world, our bodies, and our very perceptions of one another? Could it be that we are living in a world where the true nature of our being has been hidden from us, obscured by a veil of division that we were never meant to wear? Perhaps the answers lie in the forgotten histories of our ancestors, in the lost knowledge that they carried with them. Some researchers believe that ancient knowledge, passed down through secret societies and hidden texts, holds the key to understanding the true nature of humanity. These scholars suggest that the story of our skin color is not one of natural evolution, but one of divine intervention, an intervention that altered the course of humanity's destiny. But what if these truths are buried too deeply for us to uncover? What if the history of humanity as we know it is merely a shadow of what was once a far greater and more unified existence? We may never know for certain, but the questions, like the whispers of ancient civilizations, continue to echo in the corridors of time. As we continue our journey into the forgotten corners of history, we must step into the shadows of ancient civilizations, where the answers we seek may be hiding. If skin color was never meant to change, if humanity's unity was once a divine reflection, then what happened to that original purpose? Was it lost in the winds of time? Or has it been obscured, hidden deliberately by those who sought to control the narrative of human history? In the quiet ruins of Mesopotamia, beneath the ancient ziggurats, there lies a story that transcends time. The Sumerians, the first known civilization to emerge from the dust of prehistory, believed in gods who were not bound by the same rules that governed mankind. These gods were beings of pure light, described as having no distinguishable features like those of mortal men. They were neither black nor white, but something more, a glowing presence reflecting the sun's radiance in ways we could never truly comprehend. For the Sumerians, these gods were the ultimate manifestation of perfection, a unity of all things. The Sumerian texts, especially the Epic of Gilgamesh, speak of a time when humanity and the divine were indistinguishable. Kings and heroes, like Gilgamesh himself, were depicted as beings with the potential to transcend their earthly forms, to touch the divine realm. They were not bound by earthly limitations, not marked by the passage of time or by the changes in the colour of their skin. In these early accounts, humanity was united under the gaze of the gods. There were no divisions, no barriers, and the concept of race as we understand it today did not exist. But as the Sumerian civilization crumbled and the floodwaters of myth and history consumed the world, something changed. The unity of humanity began to splinter. The gods who once walked among us withdrew, leaving humanity to fend for itself. The flood, described in many ancient traditions, marks a pivotal moment in this divide. It was as if, after the flood, the divine realm withdrew its favour, leaving behind a world marked by physical and spiritual separation. Was the flood merely a natural disaster, a consequence of environmental shifts, or was it a divine cleansing meant to erase the remnants of a world too unified, too pure for its own good? The biblical account of Noah's Ark suggests that it was a divine act, a necessary purge to start anew. However, ancient texts from other civilizations seem to suggest that this event was not just a physical cataclysm, but a spiritual one. The very fabric of humanity was altered. After the flood, humans were no longer the same. Their skin began to change, their spirits began to fragment, and the unity once shared with the gods was forever lost. Some researchers believe that this separation might have been an intentional act, a way to keep humanity from reaching the same divine heights that were once possible. In the Bible, the Tower of Babel represents another critical moment of division, where the unity of language and purpose was scattered, creating the first distinctions between peoples. What if the flood was not the only event that caused the fragmentation of humanity? What if the Tower of Babel was a secondary event, the final nail in the coffin, that solidified humanity's division and led to the multitude of races we see today? Across the world, from the far reaches of the Americas to the distant lands of Africa, ancient cultures speak of a time when the gods walked among men. The Mayans, for instance, believed that their ancestors were created by the gods from a mixture of corn, water, and divine blood. The gods, much like those of Mesopotamia, were beings of light without skin, and were said to have shared their knowledge with humankind. The ancient Egyptians, too, worshipped gods who were often depicted as having skin that shimmered like gold or was without form. The idea of gods being without race, without colour, is a common thread in these civilizations. In these ancient myths, we see a recurring theme, the idea of a unified humanity, a humanity not bound by the divisions that would come later. But why, after the gods withdrew, did these divisions take root? Some believe that the appearance of different skin colours may have been a result of spiritual, not physical, changes. The physical changes we associate with race, dark skin, light skin, and everything in between, may not have come from mere adaptation to the sun or environmental changes. Instead, they may have been a reflection of deeper spiritual changes, a physical manifestation of humanity's increasing separation from the divine. This idea can be traced to the concept of spiritual descent found in many ancient texts. The Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, speaks of the cyclical nature of existence, of a time when the divine beings descended to earth to guide humanity, but eventually had to withdraw as humanity descended into darkness. The once bright and unified world of the gods became clouded with illusion as people became more focused on material desires. The divine presence faded, and with it, the unity of mankind. The ancient Greeks, with their understanding of the world and the gods, also saw humanity's fall from grace as a spiritual and physical decline. The Greek philosopher Plato spoke of an ideal world, a world of harmony and unity, where men and gods existed together in perfect balance. In his writings, Plato often referenced the idea of a golden age, a time when humanity was at its peak, both physically and spiritually. But as time passed, the unity of the gods and men began to fade, and the differences between people began to emerge. Is it possible that the divisions we see today, the distinctions between races, between cultures, between people, are not just the result of environmental adaptation, but are in fact the product of a deeper spiritual shift? What if the physical differences we now associate with race were never meant to be? What if they are a reflection of humanity's lost connection to the divine, a manifestation of our separation from the unity that once existed? Could the true history of mankind be one where race, as we know it, was never part of the original design? The history of our skin colour may not be what we've been told. It may not be a simple matter of evolution or survival. It could be the story of humanity's fall from grace, a story written in the colour of our skin, in the very fabric of our being. And as we dig deeper into the ancient texts, the stories of the gods, and the myths passed down through generations, we may begin to uncover a truth far more unsettling than we could have ever imagined. But perhaps the most unsettling question of all is this: if our skin colour was never meant to change, if it was never meant to divide us, then what does this say about the future of humanity? Can we ever return to the unity we once had? Or are we doomed to live in a world defined by differences that were never meant to exist? As we dig deeper, Into the myths and whispers of the ancients, the threads of unity and division become increasingly tangled. The history of humanity's skin color, its very essence, may lie hidden beneath layers of time, myth, and forgotten knowledge. But what if the separation of humanity into distinct races, into beings marked by differing hues, was not the natural course of evolution, but something far darker? What if it was an engineered division, the result of a deliberate force seeking to create separation where there was once unity? In the sacred texts of the ancient world, we find a recurring motif, the idea of humanity being one, a single entity, before a great fall. This fall was not merely a physical one, but a spiritual one. It was the fracturing of something divine, the tearing apart of the unified essence that had once bound humanity together. What if the fragmentation of our skin colour, the very thing that has come to define our outward appearances, was part of this fall, an outward manifestation of an internal spiritual separation? The ancient Egyptians, with their profound understanding of the divine, spoke of a time when the gods and humans were one. In the Egyptian creation myth, the first humans were made from the tears of the god Ra, the sun god. These humans were said to be perfect, without blemish, without division. But as the world changed, so too did humanity. Over time, the purity of creation began to fade, and the divine connection weakened. The Egyptians believed that the gods themselves had once walked among them, teaching them the mysteries of the universe. But as humanity's spiritual understanding faded, the gods withdrew. This withdrawal, some believe, was the beginning of the separation between the divine and the mortal, a separation that would eventually lead to the physical divisions we see today. The Egyptians were not alone in their belief in a time of unity. The Hindus, with their ancient texts and philosophies, speak of a similar period of harmony, a golden age known as Satya Yuga. In this age, humanity was said to be in perfect balance with the cosmos, living in unity with the divine. There were no distinctions between people, no differences in skin colour or appearance. But as time passed, the world descended into a spiritual darkness, and the divine presence receded. This shift, known as the onset of Kali Yuga, marked the beginning of humanity's fragmentation, the emergence of division and disparity both in spirit and in form. Even in the ancient traditions of the Native Americans, we find echoes of this idea of unity before division. The Hopi people, whose ancestors inhabited the American Southwest, speak of a time when humanity was united with the earth and the stars. According to their traditions, humans were once a single people, living in peace and harmony with nature. But as time passed, humans lost their connection to the earth, and the great spiritual unity that once existed was lost. The Hopi believe that humanity's return to unity is part of a prophecy, one that will come when the earth and the heavens align once again. Could this alignment be symbolic of a return to the unity that humanity once shared? Could it mean the healing of the divisions that have been sown across the ages, the presence of a common thread, this idea of a time when humanity was united, spiritually and physically, raises the question, was the original unity of humanity always meant to be? Was the change in skin colour and the divisions between peoples something that was destined to occur, or was it something that was forced upon us? The more we look at these ancient traditions, the more we begin to wonder if the change in skin colour was not a natural progression, but a shift caused by a greater force, one that sought to obscure the unity of humanity. Some researchers believe that the answer lies in the celestial realm. According to certain esoteric traditions, the divine beings, those who walked among us in the distant past, were not of this world. They came from the stars, from a place beyond the reach of time and space. These beings, known by many names across different cultures, were said to have had the power to alter the very fabric of existence. Some believe that they were responsible for creating humanity, for shaping our bodies and minds. But what if their intervention went beyond mere creation? What if they also shaped the physical differences we see today, as a way to ensure humanity's spiritual growth, or perhaps as a way to test humanity's resilience in the face of division? The concept of a celestial intervention is not new. The ancient texts of the Bible, for example, contain stories of Nephilim, beings who came down from the heavens and took human wives, creating a hybrid race of giants. These beings, often thought to be fallen angels, were said to have altered the course of human history. Could their descent have had a lasting impact on humanity, not only in terms of power and knowledge, but also in terms of the physical body? What if the Nephilim, in their attempt to bridge the gap between heaven and earth, were responsible for the first divisions in humanity? The Greeks too spoke of divine beings who mingled with humans and who left behind offspring with divine and human blood. These hybrid beings were often depicted as heroes, capable of great feats, but they were also marked by their differences. The Greek hero Heracles, for example, was the son of the god Zeus and a mortal woman, Alcmene. He was said to be a man of extraordinary strength, but his divine heritage also set him apart from ordinary men. What if these stories are not just mythological, but instead represent the beginning of the divisions we now see in humanity? But the questions only multiply. If skin colour was never meant to change, if it was never meant to divide us, then why did the gods allow this change? Why did the divine beings, who once shared their knowledge freely with humanity, allow us to become so fragmented? Were we meant to live in unity with the divine, or was our division part of a larger plan, one that we are only beginning to understand? Some believe that the separation of humanity into different races was not a punishment, but a necessary stage in our spiritual evolution. Perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, the divisions we see today are part of a process, a test of sorts, one that will ultimately lead to our reunification. If that is the case, then the change in skin colour may not be as tragic as it seems. It may simply be part of a larger cosmic plan, one that is beyond our understanding. But even as we consider this possibility, we are left with a troubling thought. If our skin colour was never meant to change, if the divisions we see today are the result of an external force, then what does this say about our true nature? Are we merely the sum of our physical appearances, or is there something deeper, something that connects us all, regardless of the skin we wear? The journey to uncover this truth is long, and the answers we seek may never be fully revealed. But as we dig deeper into the myths, the histories, and the hidden knowledge of our ancestors, we may begin to see the outline of a world that was once united, a world where the colour of our skin was never meant to divide us, but instead to reflect the unity of our spirit. In the pursuit of truth, we often find ourselves standing at the edge of the unknown, peering into the vast expanse of the mysteries that have eluded human understanding for centuries. The question of whether skin colour was meant to divide us, or whether it was always part of a grander design, is one that brings us to the crossroads of science, mythology, and spirituality. If the gods once walked among us, as the ancient texts suggest, and if they were beings of light, free from the divisions we now face, then what was their true purpose in shaping us the way we are? The answers, it seems, lie in the intersection of the divine and the material world. In the myths of ancient cultures, there are consistent themes that hint at a profound understanding of human nature. The divine beings, the gods, the angels, the messengers, were often depicted as transcendent beings with no physical boundaries. In many ways, they were not bound by the same limitations that we are. Their skin, if they even possessed it, was not defined by pigment, but by something deeper, something that went beyond the material realm. The Sumerians, in their intricate cosmology, believed that humanity was created to serve the gods, but the creation of man, according to Sumerian myth, was no simple act. The gods, led by the Anunnaki, came to earth not just to shape the human form, but to imbue it with purpose and destiny. The early humans were said to have been created from clay, but the Anunnaki did not simply form them physically. They gave them something that transcended the physical knowledge. In many ways, the Anunnaki were believed to be responsible for the very fabric of human civilization. They brought agriculture, writing, mathematics, and the arts. They taught humanity how to build cities and how to harness the forces of nature. But beyond these practical gifts, the Anunnaki also gifted humanity with something far more elusive, the divine spark, the essence of life that connected them to the cosmos. What if the original unity of humanity was not just spiritual, but also cosmic in nature? What if the gods, in their wisdom, designed humanity to reflect the divine harmony of the universe? The Sumerians, like many ancient civilizations, saw the cosmos as a reflection of divine order. The stars, the planets, the elements, all were part of a grand interconnected web. If humanity was created in the image of this divine order, then perhaps the unity of the human race was meant to reflect the unity of the cosmos. If this were the case, then the division of humanity into different races, marked by distinct skin, colours, might be the result of something far more complex than environmental adaptation. The divine blueprint of humanity, according to these ancient traditions, was one of unity. The gods did not create divisions, but instead imparted knowledge, hoping that humanity would one day rise to meet its potential. This potential, it seems, was not just physical, but spiritual. The ancients believed that humanity was meant to grow into something greater, something transcendent. The divisions we now see in skin colour may be the result of humanity's failure to realise this potential, a failure to maintain the original unity that was once present. But what if the divisions are not permanent? What if the change in skin colour was not a final separation, but a stage in humanity's development? What if the divine plan was always to bring humanity back into unity, to restore the balance that was lost? Could the differences we now see be the result of an unfinished process, one that is still unfolding? The answer, perhaps, lies in the hidden teachings of the ancients, teachings that have been lost to time. The Egyptians, with their deep knowledge of the spiritual world, believed that the journey of the soul was one of ascension. The soul, they believed, passed through many stages, each one more refined than the last. In their belief system, the physical body was merely a temporary vessel, and the true essence of the individual lay within the soul. The Egyptians saw the soul as something that could transcend the limitations of the body, something that could reunite with the divine after death. This idea of ascension, of transcending the physical realm, is also found in the teachings of other ancient cultures. The Greeks, with their concept of philosophia, the love of wisdom, believed that the purpose of life was to seek knowledge and wisdom, to ascend to a higher state of being. The philosopher Plato spoke of the soul's journey, suggesting that the ultimate goal of humanity was to reunite with the divine. In his dialogues, Plato described a world where the soul was pure, unencumbered by the limitations of the body, and where the divisions of race and skin colour had no meaning. Could this idea of spiritual ascension hold the key to understanding the changes in skin colour? Some researchers believe that the physical differences between people may be a reflection of spiritual differences, a manifestation of humanity's collective journey. What if the colour of our skin, the distinctions we now hold so dearly, is not a permanent feature, but a symbol of the journey we are all on? If humanity is meant to transcend its physical limitations, could the divisions of race be part of the spiritual process of ascension, something that will one day fade away as humanity rises to meet its divine potential? The question becomes, if humanity was meant to transcend these divisions, then how do we reclaim the unity that was once ours? How do we return to the original blueprint, the divine plan that was set in motion so long ago? The answer, it seems, lies not in the physical realm, but in the spiritual realm. The ancient texts speak of a time when humanity will return to its true nature, when the divisions of race and skin colour will no longer matter. This return, however, will not come easily. It will require a shift in consciousness, a realization that we are all connected, that the divisions we see today are not the result of natural law but of something far more transient. In the end, perhaps the divisions of skin colour are not a permanent state, but a reminder of what was lost and what is yet to be regained. What if the true unity of humanity lies in its shared potential, in the recognition that beneath the surface we are all the same? Could it be that the answer lies not in the external, but in the internal? If we were to look beyond the colour of our skin, beyond the divisions that separate us, would we finally see the truth, that we are all part of the same divine essence, the same cosmic unity? And if that is the case, then perhaps the change in skin colour was never meant to divide us permanently. Perhaps it was always part of a larger plan, a test of our ability to rise above the superficial, to see beyond the veil, and recognize the divine spark within each of us. The answer may lie not in the physical, but in the spiritual transformation that is yet to come. As we continue to unravel the fabric of humanity's origins, we must pause and ask ourselves, what if the divisions we see today, skin color, ethnicity, and even culture, are not just external features, but encoded messages hidden in plain sight? What if they are not only a consequence of humanity's fall from grace, but part of a much older and more complex design? A design that stretches beyond the physical and into the spiritual and cosmic realms. Ancient civilizations, with their rich and enigmatic knowledge, seem to speak in riddles that modern scholars have only begun to decipher. The Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Hindus, and even the Mayans all left behind clues, cryptic symbols, and teachings that point to a greater understanding of the nature of humanity. These civilizations were not just concerned with the here and now. They were deeply connected to the stars, to the movement of celestial bodies, and to a hidden knowledge that transcended the earthly realm. The ancient Egyptians, perhaps more than any other culture, understood the profound connection between the material world and the divine. Their belief in the soul's journey and its eventual reunion with the divine speaks to an underlying knowledge of the universe that modern science is only beginning to understand. The Egyptians, through their elaborate system of hieroglyphs and their sacred texts, spoke of a time when humanity was united with the gods, when the distinctions of race and skin color had no meaning. But as humanity fell into spiritual darkness, these divisions began to emerge. What if these divisions were not just a consequence of humanity's spiritual fall, but were in fact part of a divine plan, one that we are still unfolding today? Could it be that the differences in our skin, the physical characteristics that set us apart from one another, are a reflection of a deeper, more cosmic truth? Some researchers believe that these physical differences are not just random variations, but are part of a greater blueprint, a divine pattern that was encoded into humanity from the very beginning. If we look closely at the symbolism of ancient cultures, we begin to see a pattern. The Egyptians, for example, had a deep understanding of the concept of Ka, the life force or spirit that resides within every living being. The Ka was said to be the essence of a person, the divine spark that connected them to the gods. But the K was not just an internal force. It was also reflected in the physical world. The Egyptians believed that the Ka could be influenced by the stars, by the alignment of the planets, and by the forces of nature. What if, in this cosmic design, the differences in skin color were a reflection of the different spiritual paths that humanity was meant to take? The idea that the physical world mirrors the spiritual world is not unique to the Egyptians. The ancient Greeks, too, had a profound understanding of this connection. The Greek philosopher Plato spoke of the world of forms, an idealized realm where perfect versions of everything, ideas, concepts, and even people, existed. In this world, there was no distinction between race or ethnicity. Every being was an expression of the divine, a reflection of the perfect form. But in the material world, these forms were imperfect, fragmented, and divided. The divisions we see today, according to Plato, are a consequence of humanity's fall from the idealized realm of the forms, a realm where unity and perfection reigned. The Greeks also believed in the concept of anima mundi, the soul of the world. This concept suggests that the entire universe, including humanity, is interconnected. The universe is not a collection of isolated entities, but a single living organism, with every part connected to every other part. In this view, the differences in skin color, culture, and ethnicity are not divisions, but expressions of the diverse ways in which the divine essence manifests in the world. These differences, rather than being a source of conflict, are a reflection of the richness and complexity of the divine plan. Could it be that humanity's divisions are not the result of a cosmic accident, but part of a larger design, one that is meant to teach us about unity in diversity? Some believe that the differences in skin color are a form of cosmic camouflage, a way for humanity to experience separation, in order to better understand unity. By experiencing division and difference, Humanity is learning to transcend the physical and return to its spiritual roots, to the unity that existed before the fall. In this view, skin color becomes more than just a physical trait. It becomes a symbol of the spiritual journey that each individual must undertake. The color of one's skin, like the many shades of a prism, represents the unique path that each soul must follow on its journey back to the divine. Just as a prism separates light into its constituent colors, humanity's divisions separate the divine essence into a multitude of forms, each one unique, but all connected by the same source. But if this is true, then what does it mean for the future of humanity? If the divisions we see today are part of a divine plan, what is the purpose of this plan? Are we meant to transcend these divisions, to reunite with the divine essence from which we came? The ancient texts suggest that humanity's ultimate goal is not just to survive, but to awaken, to remember our divine origins and reunite with the cosmic unity that once existed. The Hindu teachings of moksha, the ultimate liberation of the soul, speak of a time when humanity will transcend the limitations of the physical body and return to the divine source. In the Buddhist tradition, the concept of nirvana reflects a similar idea, a state of enlightenment and unity with the cosmos, where the divisions between self and other, between race and ethnicity, fade away. These traditions, while different in their specific beliefs, share a common theme. The ultimate goal of humanity is spiritual reunification. In this light, the divisions of skin color may not be as permanent as we once thought. They may simply be a stage in the evolutionary journey of humanity, a stage that we are meant to move beyond. The question is, how do we move beyond these divisions? How do we awaken to the unity that lies hidden beneath the surface of our physical forms? Perhaps the answer lies in the teachings of the ancients, in the hidden knowledge that has been passed down through the ages. The sacred texts, the symbols, and the myths all point to a deeper truth, that the divisions we see today are not permanent. They are simply a reflection of humanity's current state of spiritual development. As we awaken to the true nature of our being, as we remember our divine origins, the divisions between us will begin to fade. The unity that was once lost will be restored. But the journey to this unity is not an easy one. It requires a shift in consciousness, a recognition that we are all part of the same divine essence. It requires the courage to look beyond the surface, beyond the color of our skin, and see the divine spark within each of us. And perhaps, in doing so, we will begin to heal the wounds of division that have plagued humanity for so long. What if, in the end, the change in skin color was never meant to divide us, but to show us the way back to unity? What if the physical divisions we see today are the very thing that will lead us to spiritual enlightenment? Perhaps the key to understanding humanity's true nature lies not in our differences, but in our shared connection to the divine. If the physical differences that divide us are not permanent, if they are merely a symbol of the spiritual journey we are all undertaking, then what is the true purpose of this journey? What lies beyond the surface of our physical forms, beyond the color of our skin, and into the essence of our being? As we peer into the ancient texts, the sacred traditions, and the myths of old, we begin to realize that the answer lies not in the external world, but in the inner world, the realm of the soul. Throughout history, humans have sought to understand their place in the cosmos. The ancient Egyptians, with their deeply spiritual philosophy, believed that the purpose of life was to achieve Ma'at, a state of balance, truth, and harmony. This concept of balance was not just a physical one, but a spiritual one, a balance between the material and the divine. The Egyptians believed that the journey of the soul was one of ascension, a journey that would ultimately lead to reunion with the divine, transcending the limitations of the body and the material world. This idea of spiritual ascension is not unique to Egypt. The same concept is found in the mystical traditions of other cultures, such as the Sufis in Islam, the Kabbalists in Judaism, and the yogis in Hinduism. In all these traditions, there is a shared belief that the ultimate goal of humanity is not merely survival, but awakening, a spiritual awakening that leads to unity with the divine source. The difference between the soul's ascent and the physical divisions that separate us today is key. What if humanity's spiritual awakening is the key to understanding the divisions of skin colour? What if these divisions were never meant to be the ultimate truth, but simply a stepping stone on our collective journey toward unity? The change in skin colour, the different races and cultures we see today, might simply be a manifestation of humanity's current state of development, each division representing a stage in the evolution of the soul. Just as the earth itself has evolved over millennia, so too has humanity's spiritual journey evolved, with the physical body reflecting the stages of that journey. Consider this: what if the colours of our skin are like the colours of a sunrise, each one marking the dawn of a new era of understanding? Each race, each skin colour, may represent a different facet of humanity's collective soul, a reflection of the diverse paths that we must walk in order to awaken to our shared divinity. In this sense, the differences we see today are not barriers, but bridges that will eventually lead us back to the unity from which we came. But the path to this unity is not an easy one. As we look at the world around us, we see a deep sense of division, of conflict and misunderstanding. Humanity is still grappling with the very differences that were meant to teach us, still caught in the cycle of fear and separation. The question we must ask is, how do we break free from this cycle? How do we begin to heal the wounds of division and awaken to the truth of our shared divine essence? The answer may lie in the forgotten teachings of the ancients. The ancient Egyptians, for example, believed that the soul's journey was not just an individual one, but a collective one. Ma'at was not just a personal achievement, but a societal one, a reflection of the balance that must exist within the community. In their eyes, the unity of the divine and the material world could only be achieved when humanity as a whole recognized its connection to the cosmos. The path to spiritual ascension was not just a matter of personal enlightenment, but collective awakening, a realization that we are all connected, that our differences are not divisions but expressions of the same divine source. In the teachings of the Kabbalists, there is a similar idea. According to Kabbalah, the ultimate goal of the soul is to reunite with the divine, but this reunion is not possible unless humanity as a whole undergoes a process of spiritual purification. The concept of tikkun olam, or the repair of the world, speaks to the idea that the soul's journey is not just about personal enlightenment, but about collective healing. In this view, the divisions between races and cultures are not permanent, but are challenges that humanity must overcome in order to realize its true nature. The Sufis, too, speak of a journey of spiritual ascension, one that leads to unity with the divine. In the Sufi tradition, the path to enlightenment is one of purification, of stripping away the illusions that separate us from the divine. The Sufis teach that the ego, the false self, must be transcended in order to realize the oneness of existence. And what if the ego is not just an individual trait, but a collective one? What if the divisions between us, our skin colour, our race, our culture, are manifestations of humanity's collective ego, the illusion of separation that prevents us from realizing our true unity? But perhaps the most profound insights into this process come from the ancient wisdom of the Vedas. In Hinduism, the concept of Dharma, the divine law, speaks to the idea of living in harmony with the universe, with the natural order of things. The Vedas teach that humanity is part of a larger cosmic plan, a plan that transcends the physical and reaches into the spiritual. The divisions we see in the world are not permanent, but are part of the divine play, the Lila, in which humanity is meant to experience separation in order to ultimately return to unity. In all these traditions, there is a common theme. Humanity's spiritual journey is not an individual one, but a collective one. We are all connected, and the differences we see in our physical forms are not barriers, but expressions of the divine plan. The divisions of race, of skin colour, of culture, they are not the ultimate truth, but a reflection of humanity's current state of spiritual development. As we awaken to the truth of our shared divinity, these divisions will fade, and we will return to the unity that we once knew. The question we must ask ourselves is this: how do we awaken to this truth? How do we break free from the cycle of division and return to the unity that is our birthright? Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that we are all part of the same divine essence, that beneath the surface of our differences we are all connected. The divisions that have plagued humanity for centuries may be the very thing that will lead us back to the divine, if we can see them for what they truly are, not permanent divisions, but the challenges that we must overcome in order to realize our oneness. As we reflect on the ancient wisdom passed down through the ages, we are left with a profound question. What if the change in skin color, the differences that divide us, are not meant to separate us, but to show us the way back to unity? What if the path to spiritual awakening lies not in transcending these differences, but in embracing them as expressions of our shared divine essence? The answers may be hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to awaken to the truth that has always been within us. As we peer deeper into the cosmic tapestry of existence, we are confronted with a fundamental question. What if the differences that divide humanity, those differences in race, in culture, in skin color, are not accidental, nor are they the permanent barriers that we have been led to believe? What if they are part of a larger divine design, one that is meant to guide humanity toward a profound spiritual reconciliation? The journey to unity, it seems, is not about erasing the distinctions between us, but about understanding the deeper purpose that these distinctions serve. The ancient wisdom traditions, from the Vedas of India to the sacred teachings of the Egyptians and Sumerians, all speak of a world in which unity existed before the fragmentation we now see. They tell of a time when humanity, though physically separate, was connected by an underlying spiritual truth, a truth that transcended the physical boundaries of the body. In this primordial unity, the gods were not defined by race or appearance, but by an essence that transcended the material world. And yet, humanity's fall from grace, symbolized by the Great Flood in many ancient texts, marked the moment when division entered the human story. But perhaps this fall was not a tragedy. It may have been a necessary part of the cosmic plan, the fragmentation of humanity into different races, the creation of distinct cultures, and the differentiation of skin color could be seen not as a curse, but as a process of individuation, a way for humanity to experience separation in order to understand unity. If the divine essence was once undifferentiated, perhaps the process of differentiation, through the creation of distinct peoples, each with their unique characteristics, was an essential part of the spiritual journey. In this view, the divisions we now experience are not permanent. They are the stepping stones on the path to a greater understanding of our shared divinity. The Egyptians, with their deep knowledge of the cosmos, understood that all things are connected in an intricate web of life. They believed that humanity's purpose was to live in harmony with this cosmic order known as Mat. Mat was not just a physical balance, but a spiritual harmony, a recognition that the divine order exists within everything, including the human being. In their worldview, the differences between people were not seen as obstacles, but as part of the larger plan that ensured balance. Each race, each culture, and each individual was part of a grand design, and the ultimate goal was not to erase the distinctions between them, but to recognize the divine within each. This idea of cosmic reconciliation is echoed in the teachings of the Hindus, who speak of Dharma, the universal law that governs the cosmos. Dharma is not just a set of rules, it is the very fabric of existence, the divine principle that ensures the universe operates in harmony. For the Hindus, the distinctions we see in the world are not a sign of disorder, but part of the divine play, or lila. Each soul is on its own unique path, but all paths ultimately lead to the same destination, reunion with the divine. The different races, the different cultures, the different forms of humanity, each is a unique expression of this divine plan. And as we journey through the cycles of life, we are all working toward the same goal: spiritual awakening and unity with the divine. In many ways, the idea that humanity's differences are part of a divine plan is also reflected in the ancient teachings of the Greeks. Plato, in his philosophical dialogues, spoke of the world of forms, an idealized realm where everything existed in perfect unity. In this world, there were no divisions, no differences between people. The physical world, however, was imperfect, fragmented, and divided, but Plato believed that the soul, in its purest form, was connected to the divine realm, and that it was through knowledge, wisdom, and the pursuit of truth that the soul could transcend the divisions of the material world and return to the unity from which it came. This concept of spiritual ascent, of returning to a state of unity, is a central theme in many mystical traditions. The Kabbalists in Judaism, for example, believe that humanity's ultimate goal is to reunite with the divine, to return to the Ein Sof, the boundless light of God. This reunion, they believe, will come when humanity collectively transcends the divisions of race, culture, and ethnicity, recognizing that we are all part of the same divine source. The divisions we see in the world, then, are not a permanent feature of the human condition, but are a temporary state, one that we must move beyond in order to fulfill our true spiritual potential. In the Sufi tradition, the journey of the soul is one of purification and ascension. The Sufis teach that the soul must undergo a process of stripping away the ego, the false self, in order to experience the true unity of the divine. This process of purification is not just an individual journey, but a collective one. The divisions that exist between humanity in this view are not permanent. They are the result of humanity's collective ego, the illusion of separation. As we awaken to the truth of our shared divinity, these divisions will begin to fade, and humanity will reunite in the light of the divine. Could it be that the divisions we see in skin colour, in race, and in culture are the very things that will lead us back to unity? If we view these differences not as obstacles to overcome, but as expressions of the divine, could we begin to see them as part of a larger cosmic design? Perhaps the path to spiritual awakening does not lie in erasing these differences, but in embracing them as the rich and varied manifestations of the divine essence that resides within each of us. What if, in the grand scheme of things, these divisions were never meant to be seen as sources of conflict or separation, but as stepping stones toward a greater understanding of the unity that binds all things together? The divisions in skin colour may be a temporary phase in humanity's spiritual journey, a way for us to experience separation and through that experience awaken to the truth of our shared divinity. If this is true, then the very differences that seem to divide us are, in fact, the tools by which we will ultimately come to recognize our oneness. But there is a deeper question that remains. When will humanity recognize this truth? When will we awaken to the understanding that the divisions we see are not permanent, that they are part of a larger divine plan meant to guide us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and the cosmos? Perhaps the answer lies not in the future, but in the present moment, in the way we choose to perceive the world and each other. Could it be that the true awakening of humanity will come not when we transcend our differences, but when we come to understand them for what they truly are? Could it be that our journey toward unity lies not in erasing the distinctions between us, but in recognizing the divine within each person, each race, each culture? The path to spiritual reconciliation, then, may not lie in uniformity, but in the recognition that every expression of humanity is part of the divine whole. And so we are left with a profound question. If the divisions of race and skin colour are part of a divine plan, what does this mean for the future of humanity? What if, in the end, the true reconciliation lies not in our physical unity, but in our spiritual awakening, a recognition that, beneath the surface of our differences, we are all one? As humanity continues its journey through time, we find ourselves standing on the threshold of a great realization, one that has eluded us for millennia. The divisions we see in the world, the differences that have come to define us, race, skin colour, culture, are not as permanent as we once thought. What if these divisions, instead of being the inevitable result of history, are simply illusions, veils that obscure our true nature? What if they are the reflections of an inner fragmentation, a disconnection from a deeper spiritual truth that we are only now beginning to remember? This realization, however, does not come easily. The illusions we live under have been woven into the very fabric of our existence. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to see the world in terms of division, to believe that we are separate from one another, that our differences are insurmountable, and that our skin color, our ethnicity, and our culture are the ultimate markers of who we are. Yet, as we peel back the layers of human history, mythology, and spirituality, we begin to see a different story, a story of unity, a story that transcends the superficial divisions we have come to accept as reality. Ancient wisdom traditions, spanning continents and cultures, speak of a time when humanity existed in perfect unity, a time when skin color and race were not even considered. In the sacred texts of the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Hindus, and the Buddhists, we find stories of a cosmic harmony, of a time when humanity was connected to the divine, and when the differences that now divide us had yet to take shape. These traditions tell of a world where humanity, though physically diverse, existed as a reflection of the divine unity, a unity that was not defined by race, culture, or appearance, but by a deeper spiritual essence that transcended the material world. But something changed. As the ancient texts recount, humanity's fall from grace, symbolized in stories like the Great Flood, the Tower of Babel, and the fall from Eden, marked a pivotal moment in our collective journey. These stories speak of a time when the veil between the divine and the material world became thicker, when the unity that once existed was fractured, and when the illusion of separation took root. In many ways, the physical divisions between humans, skin color, race, ethnicity, became a symbol of this spiritual separation. We began to see ourselves as distinct, isolated beings, separate from one another, and the divine harmony that once existed was lost. Yet, these ancient stories also contain a profound truth, the possibility of reconciliation. The fall was not an end, but a beginning. The divisions that arose were not permanent, but part of a larger process, a process of individuation, a way for humanity to experience separation in order to eventually return to unity. The divisions we now see in the world, in this view, are not the result of an accident, nor are they a permanent feature of the human condition. They are simply the stages of a cosmic journey, a journey that will ultimately lead humanity back to its divine origins. This idea of reconciliation, the return to unity, is a common thread throughout the mystical traditions. In Hinduism, the idea of moksha represents the ultimate liberation of the soul, a return to the divine source where there is no division, no distinction. In Buddhism, the path to nirvana is one of transcending the illusion of separateness and realizing the oneness of all things. In Christianity, the concept of the kingdom of heaven speaks of a time when all people will be united in divine harmony, where the barriers of race and culture will fall away and humanity will return to its original state of grace. The same themes can be found in the teachings of the Sufis, the Kabbalists, and the ancient Egyptians, all of whom spoke of a time when the divisions of the material world would be transcended and humanity would once again recognize its oneness with the divine. But how do we get there? How do we transcend the illusions that have held us in a state of separation for so long? The first step, perhaps, lies in the realization that these divisions, though they may feel real, are not the ultimate truth. They are the manifestations of an egoic consciousness, a false self that has become attached to the material world. This ego, which has been shaped by centuries of conditioning, is the veil that obscures our true nature. It is the ego that sees skin color as a measure of worth, culture as a marker of identity, and race as a source of division. But this is not who we truly are. The path to reconciliation, to spiritual awakening, begins with the recognition that these distinctions are not the essence of our being. Beneath the surface of our physical forms, beneath the color of our skin and the boundaries of our cultures, there lies a deeper truth. We are all part of the same divine essence. This realization, once understood, begins to dissolve the illusion of separation. It begins to heal the divisions between us, allowing us to see each other not as separate beings, but as reflections of the same source. In the mystical teachings of the Sufis, there is a beautiful metaphor, the image of the mirror. According to this teaching, the human soul is like a mirror reflecting the divine light, However, the mirror is clouded by the layers of ego, by the divisions that separate us from one another. As we strip away these layers, through spiritual practice, through self-awareness, through love and compassion, the mirror becomes clearer, and the divine light within us shines through. This is the path to reconciliation, the process of removing the veil of separation and allowing the divine essence to shine through. But how do we move beyond the ego? How do we strip away the layers that cloud our perception and prevent us from seeing the truth of our oneness? The answer, according to the ancient teachings, lies in love, unconditional, selfless love. Love is the force that transcends all divisions. It is the force that connects us to one another, to the divine, and to the universe as a whole. Love is the antidote to fear, to separation, to division. When we love one another without judgment, when we see each other as reflections of the same divine light, the divisions of race, skin color, and culture begin to lose their power. Love is the key to spiritual reconciliation. But love, in this sense, is not just an emotion, it is a state of being. It is the recognition that we are all connected, that we are all part of the same divine essence. It is the ability to see beyond the surface, beyond the color of someone's skin, and to recognize the soul within. When we cultivate this awareness, we begin to transcend the illusion of separation. We begin to see the unity that lies beneath the surface of the material world. And so, as humanity moves forward in its journey, we are left with a powerful question. Will we awaken to the truth of our shared divinity? Will we see the divisions that have plagued us for so long as the illusions they are? Or will we continue to live under the veil of separation, bound by the false self, unable to recognize the divine spark within one another? The path to unity is not an easy one. It requires the courage to look beyond the surface, to see through the illusions that have shaped our world for millennia. But the possibility is there. The awakening is within our reach. If we can learn to love one another, to see beyond the colour of our skin and the boundaries of our cultures, we will begin to dissolve the veil that separates us from one another and from the divine. And in that moment, we will realise the truth. We were never truly separate, never truly divided. We are all one. As the veil of illusion begins to lift, we are confronted with a profound truth, the divisions that have separated us, whether by race, culture, skin colour or creed, are not as real as we have been taught to believe. They are the result of an age-old misunderstanding, a misunderstanding that has clouded humanity's perception of itself for millennia. What if, at the deepest level, all these distinctions are illusions, constructed by an egoic mind that has forgotten its connection to the divine? What if, beneath the surface of these differences, humanity is not as divided as it appears, but rather is bound by a deeper unity, a unity that has always existed, waiting to be reclaimed? This is the journey we are on, a journey not to eradicate the surface differences, but to transcend them, to move beyond the separations that have been imposed upon us by history, culture, and the ego. The ancient teachings have always pointed to this truth, that humanity's ultimate destiny is not to remain fractured but to reunite with the divine source, with the unity that transcends all appearances. What if the divisions we face today are not the result of divine will, but the consequences of forgetting our true nature? Could it be that the purpose of humanity's journey, as outlined in countless sacred texts, is to awaken to this unity, to heal the wounds of separation, and to return to a state of spiritual wholeness? In the Vedic texts of ancient India, there is the idea of Brahman, the ultimate reality, the source from which all things emerge. According to the Vedas, everything in the universe is a manifestation of Brahman, from the stars above to the earth beneath, and of course, humanity. There is no distinction between the divine and the material. They are one and the same. The separations we see in the world, the differences in skin colour, in culture, in race, are not real at the deepest level. They are merely temporary forms that conceal the underlying unity of existence. The goal of life, according to the Vedic teachings, is to recognise this unity, to see beyond the illusion of separateness, and to return to the awareness of our oneness with the divine. In the same vein, the ancient Egyptians understood the concept of unity through their teachings on Ma'at, the cosmic order that governs the universe. Ma'at was the foundation of Egyptian spirituality, and it represented not only balance and harmony but also the recognition of the interconnectedness of all things. For the Egyptians, the ultimate goal was not to conquer the physical world, but to live in harmony with it, to understand that all things, people, animals, the earth and the gods, are part of the same divine whole. The divisions we see in the world, according to the Egyptians, were not permanent. They were part of the cosmic cycle, but the ultimate aim was to restore balance, to bring everything back into harmony, and to remember the unity that lies beneath the surface of all things. This idea of unity beneath the surface is also echoed in the teachings of the mystics. In Sufism, for example, there is the concept of Wahdat al-Wujud, the unity of existence. Sufi mystics believe that the entire universe, all beings and phenomena, are reflections of the divine. The distinctions between people, the differences we see between races, cultures and identities, are illusions, temporary veils that obscure the truth of our shared divinity. According to Sufi teachings, the journey of the soul is one of awakening, of realizing that there is no true separation between us and the divine. We are all part of the same divine essence, and our task is to remember this truth, to see through the illusions that divide us, and to return to the unity from which we came. In the Kabbalah, the mystical tradition of Judaism, there is a similar idea of unity. The Kabbalists speak of the Ein Sof, the boundless light of God, from which all creation emanates. The Ein Sof is beyond all form, beyond all distinction. It is the source of all things, the ultimate unity of existence. The Kabbalists believe that humanity's ultimate goal is to reunite with this divine source, to return to the Ein Sof, and to transcend the divisions that separate us. In the Kabbalistic view, the differences between people, whether in race, culture or religion, are not permanent features of existence. They are part of the illusion of separateness, a separateness that will eventually dissolve as humanity awakens to its true divine nature. What if this awakening, this return to unity, is the true purpose of humanity's journey? What if the divisions we see today, the distinctions that have been created by history, are not permanent states, but temporary challenges that we must overcome in order to realize the deeper truth of our shared divinity? The answer, it seems, lies in our ability to transcend the superficial divisions of the material world and recognize the underlying unity that connects us all. To do so, we must first recognize that the ego, which creates the illusion of separateness, is not our true self. The ego is a construct of the material world, shaped by the conditioning we experience as we grow up. It tells us that we are separate, that our skin color, our culture, our identity are the things that define us. But this is not who we truly are. At the deepest level, we are all expressions of the same divine source, and our true nature is not defined by the outward appearances that the ego creates. Once we realize this truth, once we recognize that the divisions we see in the world are not real at the deepest level, we can begin to heal the wounds of separation and move toward a state of unity. This healing is not just an individual journey, but a collective one. As humanity awakens to the truth of its shared divinity, the divisions between us will begin to dissolve. We will recognize that, beneath the surface, we are all part of the same divine essence. Our skin color, our culture, our race, they will no longer be the markers of division, but the expressions of the divine play, the Lila of the universe. Each person will be seen as a reflection of the divine, a unique expression of the same cosmic source. And in that recognition, the walls that separate us will fall, and humanity will return to the unity that was always meant to be. As we contemplate this truth, we are left with a profound question. What would the world look like if we saw each other not as separate, but as reflections of the divine? What would it mean for humanity to awaken to the truth of its shared divinity, to transcend the illusions of race, skin color, and culture, and to embrace the unity that lies beneath the surface, Could this be the ultimate purpose of our journey? A journey not to erase our differences, but to recognize the divine essence that connects us all? The answers are still unfolding. But one thing is certain: the path to unity begins with the recognition that we are all part of the same divine source. As we awaken to this truth, we will begin to heal the divisions that have plagued humanity for centuries, and the veil of illusion that separates us from one another and from the divine will finally be lifted. As we stand at the edge of a new understanding, we are left with a profound and transformative realization: the divisions we have clung to for so long, those of race, skin color, culture, and identity, are not permanent. They are not the essence of who we are. They are the illusions of a fractured world, the temporary veils that obscure the underlying unity of all existence. What if, in the end, the true purpose of humanity's journey is not to eliminate our differences, but to see through them, to transcend the divisions of the material world and awaken to the profound truth of our shared divinity? This awakening is not some distant, unreachable goal. It is already within us. It has always been within us. The divine essence, the spark of the cosmos, resides within every human being, regardless of their appearance, their heritage, or their skin color. The ancient wisdom of the world's most sacred traditions points us in this direction, urging us to look beyond the surface, beyond the ego, and to remember the unity from which we all came. In the teachings of the ancient Egyptians, this unity is symbolized by the Ankh, the symbol of eternal life. The Ankh was not just a physical symbol, it was a spiritual one, representing the connection between the material world and the divine. The Egyptians understood that the ultimate goal of life was not to accumulate wealth or power, but to align oneself with the divine order of the universe. Mat represented not just balance and harmony, but the recognition that all things are interconnected, that the divine essence flows through all beings, and that our purpose is to remember this connection. In their worldview, the differences we perceive in the material world are temporary and illusory. The true reality is one of unity, harmony, and eternal life. Similarly, the great sages of India spoke of the oneness of all beings in their sacred texts, the Upanishads. In these profound teachings, humanity is seen as an expression of the ultimate reality, Brahman. The concept of Brahman is the idea that all existence is a manifestation of a single, boundless, and eternal source. In the Upanishads, the differences between individuals, whether in race, culture, or appearance, are not seen as permanent divisions, but as temporary veils that obscure the deeper, unchanging reality of oneness. The goal of life, according to these teachings, is to awaken to the truth of our divine nature, to realize that we are not separate from one another, but reflections of the same universal spirit. The same truth is echoed in the teachings of the Buddha, who spoke of the interconnectedness of all beings. In the Buddhist tradition, the concept of dependent origination teaches that all things arise in relation to one another, and that nothing exists independently. The Buddha taught that the divisions between people, the walls we build around ourselves based on race, culture, and identity, are simply the result of ignorance. These separations, he said, are the product of the ego's attachment to the physical world, which is in turn rooted in our misunderstanding of reality. The path to enlightenment, the Buddha taught, is the path of transcending the ego and realizing the truth of our interconnection, the truth that beneath all differences, there is only oneness. This understanding of oneness is not just a philosophical or spiritual ideal, it is a living truth, a reality that we can begin to experience in our everyday lives. When we look beyond the surface, when we see each other not as separate individuals, but as expressions of the same divine essence, we begin to heal the wounds of division. In this recognition, there is no longer any need for conflict, for competition, or for separation. Instead, there is only love, compassion, and unity. But how do we arrive at this recognition? How do we move from a world divided by race, culture, and identity to one that is unified in its understanding of our shared divine essence? The answer, it seems, lies in love, unconditional, selfless love. Love is the force that transcends all barriers, all divisions. It is the force that connects us to one another, to the divine, and to the cosmos itself. Love is the key to spiritual awakening, and it is the antidote to the egoic mind that sees separation where there is none. The teachings of the great spiritual masters, from Jesus Christ to Rumi, from the Buddha to the Dalai Lama, have all pointed to the transformative power of love. They have taught us that love is not just an emotion, but a state of being, a way of seeing the world and each other. When we love without judgment, when we see others not for their skin colour, their nationality, or their religion, but as fellow expressions of the divine, we begin to dissolve the walls of separation. Love enables us to recognise the divine spark in every person, in every being, and in every experience. This love is not confined to a select group or a particular race or culture. It is universal. It transcends the limitations of the material world and reaches into the spiritual realm where all things are interconnected. Love is the force that binds the universe together, and when we align ourselves with this force, we begin to heal the divisions that have plagued humanity for so long. In this way, the divisions between races and cultures become not barriers to unity, but stepping stones on the path to spiritual enlightenment. As we awaken to the truth of our shared divinity, we begin to see the world in a new light. The differences that once seemed so significant fade away, and we begin to recognize that we are all part of the same cosmic dance. Each person, each race, each culture is a unique expression of the divine, a facet of the infinite, a spark of the eternal. In this recognition, there is no longer any room for hatred, for fear, or for separation. There is only love, compassion, and the realization that we are all one. The path to this realization is not an easy one. It requires us to strip away the layers of ego, to transcend the illusions that have been placed before us, and to see through the veil that has obscured our true nature. It requires us to look beyond the surface, beyond the colour of the skin, and to recognize the divinity that resides within each of us. But the journey is worth it, for in the end the true unity of humanity lies not in our outward appearance, but in the recognition that we are all connected, that we are all part of the same divine essence. As we move forward on this journey, we are left with a simple but profound question. Will we awaken to this truth? Will we see beyond the divisions that have separated us for so long and recognize the divine light within each person? The answer lies within each of us. It is up to us to choose love, to choose unity, and to choose the path. That leads us back to the oneness from which we came. In the end, the divisions of race, skin colour, and culture will fade away. What will remain is the truth of our shared humanity, the truth of our divine essence, and the love that connects us all. And in that moment, we will finally realize that the unity we have been searching for was never truly lost. It was always within us, waiting to be remembered.